This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
I think about how I want to lead through challenge and what kind of leader am I going to show up as when I'm stressed? Can I be the type of leader that people need in a really challenging environment? And I think a lot about how do I ensure I show up like a leader that I would want to work for?
Okay, when it comes to business, you meet some people at a networking event. You know, it's normal. In other business scenarios, you'll meet somebody you're just like, wow, this person gets it at South by, or maybe it's at Cannes. But very rarely do you actually meet someone in business when you're surrounded by 40 or so other people that have chosen to partake in, how would you say, extracurricular weekend activities. Now, look, I'm not here to judge. Fact is, some of them are my good friends. And it was New Year's Eve. Gosh, what's it, 15 years ago now? Is that what it was?
Oh, no, must have been like 12 years ago.
12 years ago. And there was a few of us, two of us, that were really not partaking in the extracurricular activities. And that was all good. I was cool. You were cool. And we met in a kitchen, and it was like in San Diego at a New Year's Eve party. And the best part about it was, at least I felt, I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for you. It was like, this woman gets it. What an odd, like we were just chopping it up for like probably an hour. It did not come up what you did. It did not come up what I did. And frankly, that probably would have ruined it if we both would have known in the first 5 minutes, because then I would have been like selling you on my agency, right? But because we didn't know, we're like, yeah, that's cool. Do your thing over there. I like this woman. She's cool. And that's how Nicole Ayers, who now runs just a multi-billion-dollar business out of Minneapolis. Am I getting that right? Or is it
It's just 1 billion.
What have you been doing? Only $1 billion? I mean, I'm so excited to have you on. I honestly should have had you on sooner. But I think because of the Europe move and the move back, and there was a pandemic, we just never figured out a way to do it until now. How's it going? You've been busy.
I've been busy. You know, the best part about that intro is that I remember the same details of
Okay, good.
And the crazy extracurricular. There were some funky dance moves that we were real curious about. And this awesome conversation. And I remember being like, man, this guy's awesome. And I think our friend Amy came up and like was like, oh, did you know at the end? And we were like, oh, wow, that makes so much sense why we're on the same wavelength. But
I'm really grateful that I did not know your background until after, because I would have blew it. And so I wouldn't have been able to help it. So I'm glad I didn't know. It's like, oh, it makes complete sense now why the two of us are over here while the rest are dancing, and there's a circle dance going on. I'm making it sound worse than it is now. It wasn't like that, okay? But anyway, okay, let's get back on track here. So look,
stay professional.
Yeah, you are what I would call a double unicorn. Okay, there's double rainbows, and you're a double unicorn. Unicorn number one, I haven't run into too many people that understand money, finance, and marketing. So let's start there. Like, did you study finance? Oh, you know what? Let's back up. I think you should give your official bio. What do you do? Where are you now? What are you running?
Who is this party girl? No. So, right. So I run part of our cereal business at General Mills. And so brands such as Lucky Charms, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Trix, Reese's Puffs. Think of like your favorite childhood memories sitting around a kitchen table. And that is the joy that I get to lead. And so it's about $1 billion worth of business, which is super fun and always a little bit scary. But at the end of the day, it's just, you're just running a business, you're selling cereal. So that's what I'm in now. I've been with General Mills it'll be 14 years this summer. which is crazy. I remember my start date. It was June 15th, which is weird because like I sometimes forget my wedding anniversary, which I my husband knows, not a secret. But I remember my start date with General Mills, which is interesting. But it's been a wild ride. You asked like the double unicorn thing. I've had many careers here. So I started from finance, came in straight off of my MBA. I liked finance because I called it the decoder ring of business, meaning if I could understand finance, then I could like easily look at a P&L and diagnose the life stage of the business and what was working and what wasn't. It was also the summer of Enron, and I was like, I'll be damned if I go to jail because I don't know what's going on in my financials, which is why I studied finance in the first place. And then I did that for a couple of years and found I was really drawn to the strategy side and the why we did things. And then the more I learned, and this was at a time when purpose marketing was just kind of starting up, I started realizing like that was what made me super motivated was like having a purpose in somebody's life. And you didn't get that in finance. You were kind of like the executor of that purpose. And that was like that first kind of glimpse of purpose is when I started thinking, I think I might want to do something different with my life. And then over time, I've worked my way into marketing and now sit on this great cereal business where I am the business unit director. So I'm kind of a general manager with a heavy lean towards marketing.
So how many years in finance before you shifted?
5 years in finance.
Wow. I mean, okay, I have to ask, and I want to be careful because I know you run a big team and someone will stumble into this podcast and they're going to listen. So a lot of marketers don't understand money. I think we're better at it. I think since, performance marketing has rolled around, you have to understand the dollars and cents. But maybe on the brand side, on the agency side, creatives, it's sort of a foreign language to us. Are you still seeing that? What is your advice for us that don't totally get that universe?
I think it's mixed. I think you see more get it. Also because you're competing for the same dollars, which is there's retailer media, there's performance media, and we're as business leaders trying to decide where do you allocate the money. So it's about the idea and the magic of the brand, but also the reality of like where are you going to put your dollars? How does that brand come to life? So I think people have to start to understand it more and more. But I think the way to explain it is like I tell this to people on my team, and I think it's funny. I'll tell it to my agency. I'll tell it to anybody who listens. I'm like, it's not. I'm not running a nonprofit. That's just not what I'm doing. And I understand that I make decisions that are for today and that are for tomorrow. And you have to help me understand if it's for the value of the brand for tomorrow, because the only reason people pay a premium for our brands is because we elicit deep emotion. And that is the business model that we run. And that deep emotion took 75 years to build on Lucky Charms. And we have decades old brands. And we have to continue to invest in that. But I need to know how that connection is going to keep building so that I can keep selling my brand in the future. Like everything should tie back to how this is going to help me sell in this current job cereal. I mean, it can be how you can help me sell cereal today and how you're going to help me sell cereal tomorrow. And we talk about that short term, long term. So how do I create that emotional connection so I keep long term consumption, but also how do I generate that short term consumption? And we have to do both. And so I think that's how I try and engage because we have different levels of the funnel we're trying to execute on. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to sell more cereal. That's kind of the simple gist of it.
So if you had to step back out and imagine someone like me having to present ideas to you, would you be easier or harder to sway on brand? Because you're like, hey, this needs to link back to the money, right? You talked about it's an emotional decision, but you could also come back and be like, Ryan, it took us 75 years to make Lucky Charms Lucky Charms. We have extracted some serious equity now. Now we have to sell cereal. Like, how often do you come back to that?
Yeah, well, I think the fun thing about cereal is that you have new families coming in to the category every day as kids join families, kids are born and grow up, and parents are bringing cereal back into their houses. And so the reality is like the job's never done. We need to continue to create that bond because you love it, but I need you to want to give it to your kids so that when your kids turn into parents, they love it and they want to give it to their kids. And then the cycle keeps going for another 75 years. So I think we talk a lot about nostalgia and cereal and how it's important, but it's only good if we keep building it and keep recruiting new kids to still love our products. So I guess the answer to your question is, I think you can convince me if you can convince me that that's what's going to happen with the work that we're delivering. Because Lucky needs to be magical. No one's going to buy a box of Lucky Charms unless he's stinking magical and makes you feel good about, sitting at the breakfast table and having that moment that cuts out the chaos of the day. So,
I'm all for levitating at breakfast. Like, who doesn't like levitation at
right?
breakfast? I'm in.
Yeah.
All right, so go back to year 5 in a day. Okay, so it's year 5 or day 2 in year 6 for you. And, I don't know if I've shared this story with you, so I'll, in the spirit of storytelling, for me, it was year 4 in a day. It was like I did everything in my power to get into the creative department. I didn't get my first choice, and then I finally got in, and it was like, oh my gosh, I can give up my khakis and then this button down and the belts for t-shirts. Victory, right? And everyone looked at me like I had 10 heads. Like, are you here to brief us? What are you doing here in the creative department? So there was, I don't think it was mental warfare, although I wouldn't put it past some of the creatives to like just do what they do to keep us down a little bit. But I did feel that, you finally pass go and move into this new world. And then there's other questions, which leads to doubt, and did you, when people first saw you shift, it's like, is there a finance meeting happening here? So what's the finance person doing in this strategic meeting? Or was everyone like, yes, this is awesome. Come on in. Let's teach you.
A good question. So when I made this shift, I was living in Switzerland, working at our Serial Partners Worldwide office as the finance manager for marketing, which is where I fell fully head over heels in love with marketing, which I maintain that love relationship with today. But I came back and no one knew who I was because I was gone for 3 years. And they were just like, who's this girl? But my finance people were like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're in a commercial role because I can talk to you and you'll get it. So those were my like lovers, were the finance people.
See, this is what I mean by unicorn, because that it is. It's like you're a translator, right? It's a completely different language sometimes.
It is. And so I got like a lot of support from the finance functional peers who I had. But your question of like who were the haters, and like funnily enough, I think I was probably my biggest hater because I would introduce myself as like, hi, I'm Nicole from finance, but now I'm in marketing. And I did this for you like for years. And I finally had somebody pull me aside and be like, you're just a marketer now. Like you've ticked the boxes, you've built you built the consumer journeys and the brand archetypes and the brand hierarchies, and you know that, and like you're actually just a marketer. And I think it took me like 4 or 5 years to stop introducing myself as a finance person who moved into marketing. So I think it was actually probably took me longer to feel like I had earned the street cred in the marketing function than did anybody else, in all honesty.
I mean, this show's about you, not me, but I think that resonates with me. Like, I'm sure I was my biggest like hater, and deep down, I probably, knowing me, use that as fuel, right? Like, you're not good enough. You're not one of them. I'm going to have to keep working. I'm going to outwork people. It wasn't that clear, it sort of swirled underneath it all. So you said, yeah, get me from, how did you get to Switzerland? Where were you? When you went over there, and how long were you there for?
So Switzerland was early in my career. I think I'd been here for 3 years. And I remember I love international. I studied abroad. I lived in Paris for a year. I worked in West Africa in my first career when I did international development before grad school. Speak French, like all the things. I'm like very into travel. And so I started and I was like, hey, I'd love to go to international. And people were like, oh, that's adorable, you little analyst. Like, you don't go international until you're a director, like in a nicer Minnesota nice way. But that was kind of the answer I got. But I just kept telling people, I was like, you know what? I hear you. I'd love to know the skill sets I should be building. I still want to go international whenever I'm ready or you're ready or there's a role. And it only took 3 years. And I was promoted from kind of an analyst to a manager, which was unheard of. And people were like, how did you do it? I'm like, because I told everybody who would listen, hey, I'd like to go to international. So I got that opportunity. I worked for an incredible, incredible manager. And she was so demanding, which was great because I really wanted to do marketing. So I could go in with ideas. I'm like, how do I help with this? And she'd be like, I have all these things you can try. And I got to do some of the kind of marketing type work where I worked on like 3-year LRPs and like how do we do planning, competitive assessments to enter markets. And I love that stuff. And then I kind of came to her and said, I think I want to do marketing. And she looked at me and she said, yeah. I was like totally wondering when you were going to come tell me that because I've seen it for like months. I was the last one to figure it out. And so I went and moved into marketing and then moved back to the US and then spent about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years here and said, you know what, I really want to go back to international when you're ready. And people were like, no, you don't go to international twice. Like, don't be silly. And I was like, well, I mean, if the opportunity opens itself up, 2.5 years later, they're like, hey, do you want to go run our marketing department for Serial Partners Worldwide or the innovation department? And I said, totally, that sounds awesome. Send me back.
You
And
should
then
probably explain what that is, by the way, because people that are like Serial Partners World,
yeah,
aren't you at General Mills?
so confusing. So Serial Partners Worldwide is a joint venture between General Mills and Nestle. And we joined our forces, I think it's probably close to 20 years ago, 25 years ago, because they had the commercial footprint and we had the brand equities and marketing acumen and I would say like ability to make the cereal products. And through Serial Partners Worldwide, we sell all of our General Mills brands and some Nestle brands outside of North America. So if you go and you pick up a box of Cheerios in the UK or in France, it's sold through this joint venture.
Okay, and you're there, so you go back again for the and by the way, at this point you're married.
Married, yep. Now I'm married.
And you're married and you're dragging your husband, kicking
Yep.
and screaming to Europe for the second time.
He was not kicking and screaming. He was thrilled. He liked to call it his retirement, and I was like, "You're not retired. This is just a sabbatical." But he loved it, and he picked up like a full-time job travel agent, and he booked us, and we traveled all around the world. We traveled every other weekend. When we moved there, he had been to 3 countries, and when we got back, he'd been to 42. That was for
Wow.
3 years we were there. Yeah, we traveled a ton.
And I know you have children now, but did you have kids the first time when you were there, or the second time?
No kids the first time,
And then the second time you had one.
and then the second time I had two.
You had two.
I had
And
two.
now you have
Two.
okay, I'm just trying to get caught up here.
Yeah.
So
Oh wow.
so how long have you been back in the States?
I've been back now for 2 years.
Are you getting the itch? Because usually things happen in threes. I'm just asking.
No, no itch. No itch. We love our children and we were really kick-ass parents of one child. And we were like, we're living our best lives. And then I got pregnant. And I was like, well, this is happening. And I'm so glad it did because my second is lovely. But at the time, so I didn't tell you this. So when I was pregnant found out I was pregnant with my second daughter, I had just been promoted to director. And I found out I was pregnant the day I started. The day I started. And I was so excited. I was going to lead ice cream, which is Haagen-Dazs brand, and snacks, which is the biggest brand in Europe, was Nature Valley. And it was for Europe and in Australia. And I was super excited to start this job. And I was like, this is my next chapter. Like, I'm killing it. I am so pumped. And that night I found out I was pregnant. And I was like, this was like just not in the plan. And I was terrified to tell my boss because I was like, he's going to think I totally put one over on him. But he was amazing and super supportive and very happy for me. But I ended up doing that job for 10 months, like literally, because I found it 10 months later. And then did that for a year and then came back while I was on maternity leave. And they called me up and said, hey, we have a job for you in the US. We can't tell you what it is, but we need you to get on a plane and move back to the US. And it was the tail end of the pandemic. And I was like, okay, I mean, you've treated me right so far, General Mills. I guess I'll do this. Got on the plane, moved back. And I still remember I was like, we rented a cabin up north because that's what you do here. Not from here, but you do that if you live here. And here being Minnesota. And I remember standing like in a grassy lawn area and I got the phone call and they're like, you are going to be working in cereal. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. These are the most iconic brands. I can't believe you're trusting me with this business. And then I had like a little bit of a heart attack because I was like, it's $1 billion of the most iconic some of the most iconic food brands, like, what are they thinking putting me in charge?
And here you are today.
I still have a job. Doing great.
All right. So, what I love about this conversation is inside the vessel of the voices is like, there's some pretty serious learnings. So like, here's what I'm hearing. One, it's not where you start, it's what you chart. Like you knew you wanted to go to Europe. You knew you wanted to play around in marketing. Like me, we didn't get our first choice. Maybe you did get your first choice, but then discovered, oh wow, this is interesting. Now I know money, waterfall effect, money and story. You're much more dangerous because of it. Two, why not you? Just because no one else has gone to Europe doesn't mean that it's not possible, which I think is sort of 2B, which is ask, right? I'm a big state it and create it guy. So like state it and create it. Let the intention be known that you want to go to Europe. And guess what? You've now fulfilled that destiny of going to Europe, not once, but twice. And then I just think, look, I don't have to tell you about hard work and staying curious. I do find it really fascinating when you said the baby was not in the plan. As someone that knows money and knows marketing, I mean, you couldn't have just defined plan more. Like, there's always a plan. I guess I'm curious, even in your job, and I know the canned answers, you have to stay fluid and agile, but like, how often are you trying to stay on plan? And realistically, the world seems to be so fast now. You could build a year plan, you could build a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, but what is realistic? And how often do you stay on that plan versus another pivot, another pivot, another pivot?
That's a good question. I think the plan, the thing I say a lot to my team is like, we're going to build a plan and we're going to build the best plan that we know we can. And then we're all going to look at each other and say, we know that's not actually what's going to happen, right? Because we don't know what is going to happen, but I can tell you categorically that the plan we wrote will not be what happens over the next 12 months. And that's just because it's the reality of what it is. And so I think teams who respond well together to the challenge of change are the ones who win. And I think I consider the team that I have super high performing. And when new people come onto the team, they're like, wow, it's so easy to kind of like step in. And I think the reason that is because we are very adaptive together. Not just like me being like, oh, what's the change? What's the change? But knowing how my role is going to affect this person's role and this person's role, so that we come together and say, hey, we're going to swarm this problem and we're going to pivot, which at the end lets you deliver your plan, but the way you got there ends up being different than you thought you were going to get there. And so I always say, like, whenever you're on a team, like, your competitive advantage is not like, can you run the plan, but can you adapt quicker to achieve what you said you were going to achieve? Because the way you get there is going to be different than you thought it was. And that has been kind of, especially when you reflect over the past couple of years of crazy supply chain and inflation, all the things that are being thrown at you, I think your ability to react is really what sets you apart as a person and as a team, more importantly, that you can react together.
This is where I know too much about you. And so I know how sports has played a role in life before work. Can you talk a little bit about what you played, how competitive you are on a scale of 1 to 10? That is such a setup. And look, yeah, you have to do your role, right? But you're not a me, you're a we. You've always been a we, and you've seen success from the team. So give a little bit of background on that, sort of what you played, and then how does that apply to the job today?
So I had the distinct privilege of playing volleyball at college at San Diego State, which is here in San Diego, which is near to my heart. And I played all through high school, all through college. And you can't play at that level without being like a 10. I don't think it's possible competitively. But then when you leave, you're like, where do I put all of this like energy? And it ends up working its way into like my professional release, if you will. And so I'm fairly competitive, but it's very externally focused, which like for me is like the most productive way to do it, which is like I want to beat the people outside of my building, not the people in my building. And And that's just kind of how I orient my competitiveness. And then as far as the we, like I was reflecting upon, like, you're like, like I think you would ask me this question, not here, but somewhere else, like, is it like scary running $1 billion business? And I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of money. It's important and it's a big company. But then I also think of like, but I don't really do it alone because I have an incredible team of people who are experts across all of the functional areas, and like the ability to like get the best out of people and create an environment that lets them be as high potential as they can makes it far less scary because you know you have an army of incredible people who are getting the right stuff done. And that's kind of like the we that you mentioned, and how I have translated it from being a sports person to being in business.
Is it conscious when you look at adding people to the team that you're like, yes, team, like, that was a swimmer. This one was a fencer. They're out of they're playing individual sports versus like team sports. Like, are you looking at team at all? I mean, I'm assuming you are, but when you're like, oh, cool, this person played a team sport, is that part of the process?
I think it's less around do you play a team sport and more around can I identify where you're going to play the best position? Like, what is your unique set of skills that will enable you to contribute to this team in the best way possible? And then like, okay, so I have somebody who's super critical and will ask me 50 different questions to see if something is going to like play out or not. And I know to go to them when I'm like working a problem and I want to make sure I foolproof it. There are other people who are like really good at rallying the troops, and it's like, okay, can you help me set this up? And so I think trying to figure out what the strengths are in your team so that you can deploy them is more of the focus versus like, are you a swimmer or are you a fencer? It's like, okay, if you are a swimmer, that means you have strong shoulders. So how can I use your strong shoulders?
I like where you went with that. Nicely done. So I did mention at the top of the show that you're in double unicorn status. And let's just assume that, someone hasn't done any research and we're just in their ears. I mean, volleyball player, black woman, out tall, right? Slightly tall.
Yeah, let me know.
When you now walk into a room, are you like, I'm kind of alone up here? Like, who looks like you, who doesn't look like you? And again, I this is a show about courage. I don't see how I don't ask this question, right? Like, do you feel, is it cool? Is it cool
Yeah.
to sort of like, as a woman and as a black woman, and I think those are both separate and together, what's it like?
Yeah, it's a big question. I would say so. I had this realization, and I've told the story before to some of my colleagues. Of I was in a room with my leadership team, and I had a new VP of supply chain who had joined, and she was a black woman, and I was like, "Oh, you look like me," and I can ask you like she's curly hair like me. I'm like, "Oh, I can ask her about her hair," and I was like, "Oh, this is so comfortable." And then like a month later, I had this like realization. I was like, "Oh my god, this is what white men have been feeling forever because they get to sit in rooms where people look like them, and it's like this underlying level of comfort." That I just didn't know. And since I didn't know I was missing it. And now that I've seen it, I'm like, oh, this is probably a contributor to maybe why I would be more comfortable in certain settings or not comfortable in certain settings. And many of the settings I'm in, I'm not going to instantly physically have a connection with somebody because we have similarities. And it was interesting because I had never thought about it because I had never experienced it. And then once I experienced it, I realized that it's actually quite a benefit to those who have it all the time. I don't
Or
know.
not, or
Or
not, like, or not, I'm not playing the just what we need is another comment from a white dude card, but like, if comfort is the enemy of progress, right? If comfort is the enemy of growth. And again, I've sat in those rooms and you're spot on. Like, I mean, I think it's like, oh, old boys club. We're so comfortable with each other. But I do feel that there's a freedom to the conversation that's happened there. And I'm not like, and we've got decisions to make on the business. Let's go. And again, that's what's also been in our way. So now you're sitting in these rooms and you're going, okay, everyone looks like us. And and the world is changing. How are we evolving? And by the way, have you actually asked? You said I could ask her what she puts in her hair and what, because I feel like I've been told don't say that. I mean, I'm bald, so what would I know anyway about that? But like, it gets complicated.
Yeah, it does, but I think the thing I learned is you just like being able to establish a connection with somebody makes it easier to have harder conversations or be like a straight shooter with somebody and say like I actually think that was a terrible idea. Not because I of anything that's wrong with you, but just because I don't think it's going to work for the business. So let's think of something else. And you have to have like a little bit of trust and connection with somebody to do that. And you got to work on it. And even if you look like somebody or you don't look like somebody, I feel like that's the basis for being able to react in situations and take bold choices and pivot quickly and take risks together. And so I think you're right. It's not necessarily like a good or a bad thing, but I think the recognition that having that connection with somebody makes it easier to have those conversations that can be hard or maybe you would hold your tongue is helpful. It just makes for better business, it makes for better decisions, it makes for bolder decisions.
I mean, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of, oh, first of all, let's state the obvious. General Mills is clearly focused on like diversity, equity, inclusion, just like Courageous is, just like lots of like this is, and I feel like we are making progress. And when I say we, I don't mean America. I mean we. I'm curious to get your take on this. Are you seeing success? Are you seeing a conscious, thoughtful approach? I almost feel like this is a silly question because I can't imagine that you guys wouldn't be investing in this conversation and operationalizing the outcomes.
Yeah. And not to be weirdly company line, but I'm super proud of the progress General Mills has made. And I've been here for 14 years. And it is markedly different, the conversations we have now than the conversations we had 10 years ago. And the representation we have, like at a officer level, I think we're about 30% people of color. So we're pretty well represented, 50% representation of women. But I don't, what I think is awesome because I think we can set a standard and we are not done yet. I think we have work to do on Black managers and we have pockets of work to do and we're not done yet. But when I look outside of General Mills, we're like far beyond a lot of other companies and how have progressed against diversity. So I think we're on a spectrum, like as is corporate America. I'm really proud to be at the tip of that spectrum with General Mills and how we've built the kind of the diversity across multiple levels of the organization. But I will say, like, there's still more work to be done. And I spend time thinking about like what am I going to do within General Mills to continue the trajectory, but also like how do I think about impact beyond General Mills? Because I think we're in front of a lot of other companies, and how do we influence broader than just the building that I work in? So we made a lot of progress, but we're not done.
If you were let's say there's a white man listening to this and is in a boardroom or in a team setting with someone who looks very different than them, and they are afraid to start a dialogue because they, for all the reasons that might be swirling in their head, right? Don't want to say the wrong thing, don't want to offend. Where should somebody start?
This is gonna sound basic, but like we're all just people. I'm not trying to be weird about that, but like just find something in common to talk about. It's not that complicated. I don't know. I don't think it is. Because once you start talking about something in common, you're going to realize you have more in common with people than you have not in common. And that doesn't mean you don't recognize that people have different experiences, but just focusing on the connection is like half the battle because then that's a human to you. And you can have a real conversation with them, and then you get over all the shit that we're worried about. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but it's like I think you just have to connect as a human, and then it goes from there.
How big is that leadership team that you're sitting on?
Oh gosh. So my leadership team is like 12 or 13. It's a pretty I have to say, like, my leadership team is the most diverse leadership team I've ever sat on, hands down.
I was going to ask, how long does it take to get to know and connect with? I mean, you've been in the org for 14 years. I'm sure some have rised in the org with you. Some were probably there and you've joined them. I'm sure it's a nice blend, but in the spirit of, connection, how easy has it been to sort of mesh with them and also keep yourself open for them to get to know you? And I think this is more about leadership, not about diversity, equity, inclusion.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard. Pandemic, it's hard when you're not in the office or in person for moments of time. I think it's hard to connect with your leadership team and the team who is reporting to you. So I come into the office a lot just to see people because that's just how it's easy for me to connect. And then like basic things of like, how are you doing? How's the onboarding going? Is this hard? And I'm pretty straightforward. And so like I'll show up and be like, man, I am underwater and I do not know if I know what I'm doing today. And I think letting people know that's how you feel about yourself, particularly if you're like a 6 feet tall Black woman and people find you intimidating, letting them know like, no, you know what, I do not have everything figured out. And just because you think I do, just let me disabuse you of some of those things. I think being vulnerable makes it easier to connect with people because they see maybe a different version of you than you see. And if you're able to be vulnerable, they're like, oh, okay, like we can have a real conversation.
Yeah, and it's in their heads, right? They don't spend a lot of time with you all the time, right? So in their heads, they have an idea of like, what's Nicole really like in this powerful leadership position? And you're like, newsflash, I don't have all the answers either. Like, that's what the team is for. My hope is to give them permission to be themselves. You can't see me, audience, but I'm wearing my mistake it till you make it t-shirt today, which I like a lot better than fake it till you make it, And so I think that's what it is too. Like keep the mistake small, maybe not $1 billion mistake in the spirit of $1 billion businesses, but like run little experiments and give yourself permission to learn from those and pivot from those and grow off of those. All right. So take us home. If you want the listener to walk away with a 1, 2, 3 lessons that they can learn or extract from even this conversation or from your job or your life, what do you want them to take away?
I like 3. Let's do 3. So, okay, 1. You mentioned this a little bit as we went through this, but I think I've done a lot of things that people are like, are you for real? Like you're just gonna go change functions. You're just gonna like move to Paris with a suitcase. You're just gonna go to Europe. These things, right? And I was reflecting on it and thinking about why. And I think it's easy to make decisions when you see the possibility of the positivity that could come out of it. And you're like, this is going to be awesome because, and then you're going to figure out how to solve the problems along the way. And so I think some of the shifts I've made, I think it was because saw the positive and the possibility before I saw the challenge. And so then I could get to the challenge when I was faced with them, which they inevitably came, but it's easy when you start with what you're trying to accomplish. And then the second part, which kind of ladders up to that, is I think I've spent time thinking about how I really want to spend my time. And when I was working in finance, I realized that I really wanted to do the things that my colleagues were doing in marketing because that looked fun. And I made the move and I've loved it ever since. I spent time thinking about how do I want to build my career? Do I want to be international in the US? And I really wanted to build a career in international. And I had fun and it was exciting and it's made me the leader I am. And so making sure you spend your time doing stuff you actually want to do, I think is really important because it means you can do the hard stuff because you really want to do it. And then I think the third one, and it gets to kind of the conversation we had about being kind of the unicorn of you're a woman, you're Black, combine those two together and it makes you can be very different in certain settings, of just like taking the time to connect with people as humans and how much of growth can just come from that tiny step, regardless of what you look like. I think is maybe the third one.
I love it. Yeah, here's what I heard. 1, stay positive in the possibilities, right? Right. Dream it. Stay curious. Go make it happen. 2, maybe spend time thinking about how you spend your time, right? So, which is a visualization exercise. And then 3, funny to talk about time, and then say slow down and really make meaningful relationships. And it's the relationships that make the world go round. And by the way, it's okay to also acknowledge, I'll put it out there, that you're not going to be besties with every single person that stumbles into your life. There will be people in your family that you don't perfectly connect with. There will be people that you work with. It's going to be transactional and it's not throwing them away. It's still human, but you're driven by different things. You like different things. It doesn't mean you shouldn't ask them how their day was, right? But deep down, it's like, oh, it goes back. And I like that we're sort of full circle that, I met this person at a party that I wanted to talk to because we were aligned on so much stuff. And I knew right then, I'm like, I want to work with this person. And it doesn't have to be today. It could be 10 years from now. This is not a lead or a seed thing. But like, I think we both agree that it's like, yeah, that's the whole point of the exercise is to try to figure out a way to just do you. And then if you happen to be doing you and someone else is doing them and they're similar enough, then, well, let's do that together. Let's figure out a way. And I think that is the goal, right? Find your people, become a team, do the we thing versus a me thing.
Yeah.
And give me like even one thing you're terrified of right now. This is a show about courage that you're afraid about, that you've got to leap on, or I'll give you a slight out, something that you have. You're like, that was super courageous of us or me, and I'm really proud of what we're doing. Just give me one of those.
I will say, so I've been in this job for 2 years now, and I'm on my third round. And it's just like, I feel like it's just getting tougher and tougher in CPG because it just is. It's just like kind of a dogfight. And I think about how I want to lead through challenge and what kind of leader am I going to show up as when I'm stressed? And like, can I be the type of leader that people need and provide like the steady hand, the decisiveness, the fairness in a really challenging environment? And I think a lot about how do I ensure I show up like a leader that I would want to work for in times of challenge? Because I think that's like the ultimate test. And so who knows what the year will bring? But I just think that business has been hard for years, and I've kind of gotten a couple, reps around the track. And so I just reflect a lot about like, how am I going to be a good leader in times of challenge?
I like the stepping into the shoes the other way and looking back and be like, if I were them looking at me, am I the leader that I would want to work for? I mean, it seems so logical, right? But I think when we are crazy and it's chaotic, and like you said, it's getting harder, which is all little fear levers. You get why we don't do that. And I call it body jumping. We body jump less and like jump into the bodies of the people looking at ourselves. All right, last questions, and then you get your life back. So you and your team, not just you, are running this $1 billion business, but do you still have imposter syndrome?
Yes. I think if you don't, you are dangerously close to being reckless, to be honest. Like if I get to work and I'm like, I've got this all figured out, I just don't think you can. There's too much stuff changing, and it keeps you from like asking and being inquisitive and pulling in experts and just like looking outside to see, am I missing something? I guess imposter syndrome is a different thing where you feel like you don't belong and you shouldn't be where you are and I haven't earned it. I don't necessarily feel like that, but I don't think I come into work and think I've got it all figured out, because I think I think if you think that, you're probably missing something.
Yeah. Well, it's also a nice little cue to be like, keep your ears open, stay open-minded, right? You're asking questions, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for popping on here. Next time you come to San Diego, make sure you let me know. I'm sure you will.
I will.
And keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, I'd love to hear more stories from the boardroom, and we'll stay in touch. Sound good?
Sounds excellent. Thank you for the time and the provocative question.
Wait, I know. Double unicorn. That's where I went. Way to go, Ryan. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.